how to get better technology onto the market faster. I thought I could try and pack as many buzzwords as I could into the title to try and encourage people to listen to it. One of the things that everybody's interested in, of course, is talking about better technology being more successful in the market. And the downside of that is that actually getting better technology to market means cleaning out your pipelines from all of the rubbish that's on your books at the moment. And I think that one of the things that is a real struggle, particularly for small companies, is they may not have the choice between products that they think are successful and products that they think are going to be less successful. So one of the challenges in getting better technology to market is in identifying the losers early on. There's a very old story about Samuel Johnson, who went into a tavern one day and having bought his pint of beer or whatever it was, he said to the man behind the bar, he said, "Good sir," he said, "would you like to sell more beer?" And the guy says, "Yeah, of course I would." And he said, "Well, try selling less froth." And that, of course, is one of the challenges that we face, is that so often we want to sell more, and so often we've already decided what it is that we want to take to market. And of course, identifying winners means spotting your losers and spotting them early. And indeed, most of the strategy that we've adopted in Match has been to try and get a very strong fix on the value of products very early on in the development cycle. A lot of money gets spent on developing stuff, and of course the more money you spend, the sort of the Stockholm syndrome takes over, doesn't it? And you keep investing and investing more and more into things that you've started to invest in. And so one of the key elements here is to identify your losers early on, to work out what doesn't have any value. Now, what is it that constitutes a good product? Clearly, it's got something to do with profits. Things that are not profitable are not good products, however much benefit they may bring in other ways. And usually, in the medical device area, profitability has got something to do with being able to manufacture a high-quality product, being able to bring the same high-quality product to market time and time again. And there's usually a scale dimension to that story as well. So if you can make something, make a high-quality product, make it to good margins on the factory floor, and then if there's a very large market that you can sell it to, or a sufficiently large market that you can sell it to, that's normally what would constitute a good product. This data is a little bit old, and the weakness of this data is that there's not a lot of, there weren't that many participants. I think there were a total of 67 responses to this to the questionnaire, and in fact we've just revisited it. We sent this out about 7 years ago, and we've just revisited it, and we're thinking of sending it out again and trying to see whether we can pick up any trends. And there were a number of things that we asked companies, medical device companies, about what they were doing in order to bring their products to market. And one of the questions was to try and ask them to identify what the internal success factors were for a medical device. So they were to think of the way in which we set the questionnaire up was to say, think of a successful product. What do you think are the most, the factors that contributed to that most? And whether you can see the bottom line or not, the top four there are something called product quality, something about management support, something about the comparison with the competitors. You can say, I've got a much better product than my competitors have got, and something about cost effectiveness. Now, this survey, a little bit vague in places, but cost effectiveness is perhaps the nearest you're beginning to get to what benefit the product might bring to some putative user. We also asked people to look at the outside factors. So what were the top factors that they identified with successful products from outside? Proficiency of sales and marketing, competition in the market size, scale factor comes in again, and timeliness, getting onto the market quickly. So a lot of factors there that actually relate to the companies that are making the products, not to further downstream where the products are going to go or where they're going to be used. So let's ask ourselves a question. Is this a surprise? At one level, it's really surprising that in the medical device area, where we're wanting to bring benefit to the world, that actually the patients don't seem to get a look in when it comes to identifying the top products that are associated with successful launch on the market. it's a bit surprising that most of these factors are related to companies looking at other companies, looking at their products themselves, looking around, looking at the market, but there doesn't seem to be much of a connection through to the final user. And so that raises the question, where is the user in terms of the design process? And as Jen's hinted, and as we'll return to some of Jen's work, there are some issues here around the way in which the user's views get integrated into the design process. And you say, well, doesn't regulation help with that? You're no longer able to sell snake oil. And the reason for that is that it's not just enough to make a profit on medical devices. We now demand that there is some clinical benefit, that it doesn't harm people, that safety, efficacy of drugs, that safety and performance of devices, that those things are looked after. And so we have regulators who, in a sense, are a proxy or provide a proxy for the patient at a very basic level to try and prevent them from being ripped off by unscrupulous vendors. Increasingly, we're going to be asked questions about what is the offering worth? What's the value of this to the people that are going to use it, to the system that's going to try and deliver care? And that's really what I want to try and focus on this afternoon. How do we work out what our offerings are worth? And so somehow we need to sort of break up this vision in which manufacturers look to one another, look to the market, look to what's out there, and actually focus their attention on the benefit that comes to patients and the value for money that the system that's paying for these technologies are going to enjoy. And that's quite a big change in focus for many companies. So if you compare the medical market with other markets, there's quite a lot of bad news. You've got to do everything that you would do for a normal product. You've got to be able to make it well, reproducibly. You've got to be able to make it cheaply. You've got to be able to handle the logistics of getting it out to people. You've got to be able to do everything and still make a profit and meet the regulators' needs and demands, which is going to cost you extra money. And increasingly, you're going to be asked to show that your product is more cost-effective to the final user and to the system that's paying for them than the best alternative. So this dimension of being able to demonstrate why you're better is increasingly important. There are three pieces of very good news. And I think one of the things that makes my heart sink when I look at a lot of medical device presentations is that it's really about the stuff that's above that red line. It's just above how you market any normal product, but transferring that knowledge into the medical device sector. And there's so much more in the medical device sector that makes it harder, but that also makes it more possible. And the first piece of good news is that the epidemiologists have done a lot of your sales and marketing. You know how many people have a particular disease. You know how many diabetics there are. My wife's a nurse in a local practice. She's doing a project at the moment. She knows she can find out very quickly how many diabetics are on the books and how many of them had the flu jab, for instance. So all of that kind of petitioning of your market has already been done. It's out there. That information is there to be used. It can be partitioned whatever way you want to. And secondly, the health economists have set up some value systems that tell you how much extra money you can charge for each extra bit of value you bring into a person's life. And of course, the final thing is that the internet actually connects people up in different ways. And very briefly, I just want to whiz through what those things mean. So here's the work that Jen was talking about at the moment. And horrors, Jen, your name's not even on that paper. It's a bit sad. There are several papers in this area. I've obviously picked the wrong one, and I'm sorry about that. This is one done by Julie Barnett, who is collaborating with Jen in this area. And again, it's the EpiPen stuff. So the question is, would you carry this thing with a sharp, pointy bit at all times? And here are some of the things that people are saying. Jen has pointed out some of the issues. None of the issues are going to be new. But the way in which the research is carried out is to get people to talk about what's going on in their lives. So somebody's saying, I mean, it's a drug, and people will do anything for a quick, especially for a shot of adrenaline. So, I don't like to declare. So there's somebody saying what their problems are in terms of wearing this around. When I go to football once a week, you get searched going into every away game these days, and I don't want to be sitting there causing a scene because I got an EpiPen, in case I'm going to sort of run onto the pitch and stab one of the players with it. Obviously what they think, you're not allowed knives, not allowed anything, so why not this, And of course, if you've got a medical device on you, there are questions about Airport security is a nightmare, okay? All of these kind of things can get quite difficult. You're carrying something, looks like it might be a weapon. Somebody else saying embarrassment. Embarrassment, definitely. Makes me feel like I'm a bit labeled as, oh, there's something wrong with her. It's obvious there's something a little bit wrong with me. And one of the interesting questions is, could we turn this kind of technology into something which is much less obvious? Could it be turned into jewelry is the thing I think would be really exciting. And, you've already pierced somebody's ear, well, why not give them an extra jab if they need it and have some nice dangly earrings or whatever. Other bits and pieces that we have to wear anyway that we want to look a little bit more exciting. Why do we have to have it in this boring and rather large format? Could we have it as a credit card, something really thin with a little needle that comes out and you just jab yourself when you need it? These are real issues for users, and companies struggle to get a hold of users. Most companies will have a voice of the user, but actually getting real users is quite difficult. That's another thing. You start a study and a surgeon wants to collect clinical data to be sure they want to use this. Here we're the villains, the universities. Experience is that this product is that this is the product they want to use. You have to notify the hospital R&D. Suddenly they see it as an R&D project. They throw on their overheads, extra hurdle to go through. They start reviewing it in addition to an ethical board. Ethical practice can take a long time, add a lot of delay to what people are trying to do. By and large, most of our market research is done with surgeons, not with the end users. I can't get to the end users. I will use the surgeons. I can get to them. How it will be marketed will be through the healthcare professionals who will have to sell it effectively to the patient, show them how to use it. So you're saying, I'm trusting the surgeon to tell me how it's finally going to work, and then I will use other people in a training role to deliver this kind of teaching. Formal method of gaining patient data, which means at the moment, for example, we've conducted clinical trials, clinical investigations, all sorts of clinical information gathering is going on at the hospital. We tend to gather information, first of all, on the effectiveness or efficacy of it, any advance, any variation that's likely to happen to the unit, any proposals for change that are going to improve the machine are all tested out in a clinical environment. So somebody there is describing actually quite a big process, probably a process that's too expensive for many small companies that have a particular technology they want to bring to market. Big companies have got this sorted out. They've got very, very streamlined processes that work extremely well. Under Match, that paper there is by Money and Barnett et al. And Jen is in there. Jen Martin JL, she's in that bit. We did some work on trying to work out, this is quite a complicated diagram. I love it as a diagram. A lot of people in Match hate it, but I think this is a great diagram. I love it, so I'm going to inflict it on you this afternoon. And basically what this diagram has done is it's connected up the different types of users, the surgeons, the end users, the carers, the patients, the elderly, the people that are being trained, all kinds of different classes of users, and then it has connected those up to the different stages of product development, and then it went through the literature and it connected up when different sorts of users were usually consulted at different stages of development. And so this is quite a nice process that allows you to work out how you might find different sorts of users at different stages of your development. Now, of course, if we just zoom in on that, you don't have the same needs at each stage. When you're starting your product development, what you're looking for really is guidance for the design. You may need it in just a few days because actually decisions that you make at that very early stage will affect what the ultimate embodiment, shape, form, fit, function, whatever you want of the product finally is. By the time you're getting to the end of that product development cycle, you're wanting formal evidence to submit to NICE or the FDA or some of those other people. And so what we're looking for is to find ways to graduate the evidence from stuff which is cheap and easy to get to stuff which is more complicated. And that's one reason why we love social media, because people are blogging about all kinds of things. They blog, they tweet, they put up on Facebook their experiences at the GP, at the doctors, their experiences with this technology or that technology. And so we're starting to try and find ways in which we can capture what people are saying for nothing, and this slide here is just trying to capture some of the sentiment. We're playing around a little bit to see whether we can use sentiment analysis to capture whether people like or dislike stuff. So getting user input is difficult. There are a range of ways of doing it, and in the Match project, we've developed quite a number of different techniques. If you want to join Match, my sales pitch here, if you're a small company, and there's zillions of you here this afternoon, I've discovered, it's only 300 quid for the year till the end of next November. So it's dirt cheap, and Elizabeth in the blue there will be pleased to take your cash. In fact, if it's a News Fiver, she may give you a discount on that fee. But certainly we're looking to draw people into that and to find ways to reduce the information to themes and to guidelines about what's wanted. But there's something else that the health economists have do. They've said, look, you can represent whatever you've got on a simple graph, the cost against the benefit. And benefit gets measured in QALYs, which are just a measurement unit. Clearly, if something's cheaper and better, you buy it. There's no question. If it's worse and more expensive, you don't. The real difficulties are what if it's a bit cheaper but not as good, or a bit more expensive and a little bit better. And of course, the blue person here will pay a lot. Okay, that's the beepers starting to go off. I have 5 minutes to get you through Health Economics 101. Okay, this person's willing to pay a lot. This person here pays rather less. And if you're a health economist here, you're probably jumping up and down and saying, actually, people tend to pay more. They tend to want more of a discount when they're losing stuff than they're prepared to pay extra when they're gaining stuff. And so probably that won't be a straight line. It'll have a kink at the origin. But nonetheless, whether it's the government that sets this line, people say, I will pay a certain amount extra. And that's what the government says. The government says we will pay between 20 and 30,000 pounds for each QALY that is gained by a patient. And so you can draw a little diagram here. You can say, well, the existing treatment fits in this particular place, and we got a better idea than that, so we can charge a little bit more, and that gives us a headroom in which we can sell a new device. But you've got to pay also for any clinical and hospitalization costs that go with it. And we've done some interesting work, because what if you do some initial work and your first sort of stuff at the very early stage, your first analysis says, actually, if I bring this device to market, it's going to be above that line. It's going to be more expensive than people are prepared to pay. And so initially, you'd say, well, you throw it away. But we've been doing some work recently that says, actually, because you don't know it's going to be that performance, it may turn out to be a better product, and you may get some more money for it than you think you've got. So you can trade on your ignorance here. And there's not many times when you can get more money because of ignorance. But this is one of the cases where to be ignorant is worthwhile. Because there's a whole spread of performances. And here we've got a little graph that says the probability of you being able to get a certain amount back from the government is varying according to this. And the most likely is 13,000 pounds. And we've set this little example up to say, let's assume you don't believe you can make it for less than 20. So that's the very lowest amount that you can get. And so the blue star says how much is the maximum that you would be paid for this by the government, and the yellow star is the minimum that you think you can make this product for. And that's okay. That says, but don't lose heart, because there is a probability, in this case it's 28%, that little bit that's above 20,000, there's almost a third, well, certainly more than a 1 in 4 chance, that actually this product will turn out to be better than you hoped, and you might make some cash out of it. And in fact, if you integrate that through, the average probability there is about 31,000 pounds. And so you can say this is about 3,000 pounds per patient if I can make this work. So I now have a decision to make in terms of the probability. I can take a gamble now. I can invest £500,000 to try and find out whether I should spend that extra money and see whether the device is really good enough to put me into the green space, or to tell me that really I've got to stay in the yellow space. But the point is, I can abandon the product later. I can make a decision now to invest some more and find out, and that takes me into sort of some kind of serious investment decision-making inside my company. How much is it worth spending in my extra research and development in order to work out whether I'm in the yellow or going to make it through to the green in this case? So there are now good tools for identifying and tracking the value all the way through product development, for weeding out the poorer ideas, and most companies don't want to weed out bad ideas. And I know why, because we don't like weeding out any of the bad things in our own lives, or even the bad students or whatever. We always like to just keep investing. And what this says is find your losers and try and get rid of them as early as possible, and find out what users really want. Most companies still seem to want to put more money into those triggers that we looked at earlier, more into your marketing and sales, more into getting management attention, more into market development or whatever. But you can join Match, as I've said, and pick up the training at a discount. So the economic stuff, we've got a workbook together now. We've got workshops that you can sign up for. Again, see Elizabeth on the 27th of this month, but they're every month, London, Nottingham, and Birmingham. And the next one is in London, Heathrow for the health economics, Paddington, Hilton, isn't it? Paddington Hilton for the user needs. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Are there any questions? More importantly, okay, questions from a couple of questions on that side.
Hi, Steve May Russell from Small Fry. It's an observation as much as a question. My background is in originally sort of consumer product design, aimed largely at retail, but we've moved into the medical space. The reasons you list, to me, all appeared quite rational reasons. And there's two sides to our brain, and if you're not the designer for robots, you know, you're designer for human beings. And the problem is with human beings that they don't do what they should do, they do what they want to do. So we shouldn't smoke, we shouldn't drink, we should take our medication, and we don't. And so how much of that is sort of taken into account in these ways? Because we go deeply in some projects into the pleasure derived, or more to the negative side, the anxiety, fear, and humiliation of having to use these things. And that doesn't seem to be factored into this stuff.
Okay, you can certainly work this into a fear argument, and I agree with you. I think fear is a fabulous way of selling stuff, okay? You know, if you don't do this, you won't make any sales, and you'll be destitute in 5 years' time. And you can certainly take that. Increasingly, people are realizing that actually if they haven't gotten these cases together, there is a fear argument that you can take. But I agree with you absolutely about the fact that people like to view things from an intuitive as well as a purely logical point of view. And all I would say is that we're producing a set of tools that can go into people's management decision making. And if they want to put that alongside other elements of intuition, of experience, and all those kind of things, that's entirely appropriate, and that's up to them. We took this message to a group of venture capitalists once, and we said, look, we can help you identify winners in companies and losers in companies very early on. And there were two groups in the room. One group were corporate banker types, and they said, this is great, we can turn this into a tool that we can use to make our decisions, and we can put it alongside other things in our dashboard, and we can make a more rational decision. The other group of people said, no, we run our own venture capitalist fund, and what we bring to this is we have a gut instinct, and we know a good product when you see it, and we don't want to be replaced by any kind of algorithm or spreadsheet. And so I just think that, you know, people have to make their choices. All we're doing, I became an academic because I believed you could change the world with ideas. I still do, and I think you have to put the ideas up there. Some people in this room will love them, and some people will hate them and say they're simplistic.
Sure, I'm not wishing to hijack this, but
yep.
just that I'm not suggesting that you sell through fear, because that actually doesn't work. You can tell a diabetic all the consequences if they don't follow their regime, but they still won't do it, and they'll still wing it and guess the dosage and see if they can remember when they took it. And that's the human side of things. And within organizations, you do need a balance of what somebody studied and found out. You get a mix between adapters and innovators. And adapters are the ones that like the logical processes based on fact and reason. And then the innovators are the ones who use intuition and then, you know, their gut feeling for things. And when it comes down to a practical, functional evaluation, you know, the iPod was never the best MP3 player on the market. It's not for those reasons it succeeded. And I think you have to get to the heart of those things, and you need a balance of both of those before you'll really get to what's going to make for commercially successful products.
Yes, all I would say is that in the commercial market, the losers die, okay? And, you know, I've worked for companies that have just died because they backed the wrong thing. In healthcare, you don't like to take such an evolutionary approach, right? You don't like the losers to die. So what you like to try and do is to find a way in which people can make those decisions before it becomes life or death. Yeah, Steve Jobs made a great bet on the iPod. He made a terrible bet on his own cancer. And you know, you can't stop people taking those kinds of gambles. In the commercial world, you know, our car industry suffered, loads of them went down the tubes and other things. We're trying to put a system together where that live or die piece doesn't have to be part of the medical sector. It would be
is the medical sector not actually moving the power towards the patient who is becoming a consumer, and therefore a lot more of the consumer-focused NPD work becomes relevant and appropriate?
The rhetoric is certainly going that way. Where I think that's a difficult question to answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Tony.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. Let me propose a scenario to you. You're a bright academic. You think of a really nice idea in the healthcare area. This is a palliative device, really small market, whether you look nationally or internationally. But there really is, forgive the rather overused expression these days, but an unmet need out there. There isn't such a device. You've got uniqueness, you've got IPR, mature by now. What would Match's take be on the potential commercialization of this? You're never going to be a millionaire. You're not really going to grow your company. You're going to make a little bit of profit.
I think the bits that Match isn't a magic wand, okay? What it can do is help you to identify very clearly the restrictions and the opportunities of the space in which you've chosen to work, okay? So we've done some work, which I haven't talked about this afternoon, looking at cost-volume curves, for instance. You know, are you better off going for a very narrow market sector where it'll cost a lot, but you can actually demonstrate the value very specifically, or are you better off making a much cheaper device that does different things for different communities, but averaged over all of them, it has a smaller effect than it does at that particular end? And I think all that we're doing is allowing people to quantify which market they're in. In terms of, and I think what you're saying behind this is, what happens if it's unaffordable, even for those few people? And that's the sort of debate that we've seen going through the High Court. I think that you need to have a discussion about that. I think that opens up a debate with the drug manufacturers. I think it opens up a debate with the patients. It opens up groups with debate with patient support groups. And sometimes there are ways of leveraging in other funds for those small groups of people. So we can't always take the pain away, but I think what we can do is help people to quantify exactly what the pain is. Okay? Okay, one last question, sorry. Yeah.
You talked about the cost per quality that NICE uses with the £20,000 to £30,000 threshold. How relevant is that, though, in other European countries?
Okay.
And in the United States, which is where you would need to go if you wanted to be successful commercializing a new medical technology?
Okay. There's about 4 questions in there. Let's take the first one. Europe and other places. We've actually done some work again. You know, join Match, come along, have a chat to us. We've done some work on the transferability of health economic findings. So, and it was brought about by exactly that case. One of our sponsors had done some work in one European country, wanted to know whether the result was valid in another one. So we did some work around the transferability across different regimes. Although the £20,000 to £30,000 per quality isn't an international standard, there are sort of shadow standards of that level around the place, right? So in the States, there are still $50,000, maybe $100,000, but $50,000 gets mentioned from time to time. So there are some shadow limits as to what people are looking for in terms of what they're going to buy. Some of the methods that we've used in Match have been used across Europe for helping people to have a better dialogue about the value of what they're getting. And that's really what we're about. We're not about the specific £20,000 to £30,000 per quality, but everybody will have a willingness to pay threshold at some level. Bill Gates' willingness to pay threshold for his health is higher than mine, I'm sure. But we both have one at some stage. There's a slope of curve which is too high for both of us, and there's a slope of curve which is low enough for each of us. So that way of thinking, we've had people using it in Germany and in other places where the sort of the NICE guidelines don't apply. So we see this as being a way of opening up a dialogue between the people that are selling technology and the people that are buying technology that focuses on value and not on other things. The last, you made some comment about the States. What was your final 4 or 5 words about in the States?
I just said that if you wanted to commercialize a medical device, you'd need to look broadly at the United States and Europe, not just the UK. And
I believed that. I believed it with all my heart until about 18 months ago when I went to the States with somebody else from Match. And I found on the West Coast there were companies that were queuing up to come into the UK. as their launch place. And I thought, no, 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 this is wrong. You don't understand. I've been told for the last 10 years, you know, the NHS is a fragmented market. It's an unreasonable market. It's just a terrible place to do business. And yet they were queuing up there to come in. And so and the sad thing was they didn't understand any of this stuff, so they were never going to make sales. They'd met Andrew Lansley, they'd met the head of NICE, they'd done all kinds of stuff, they'd had all kinds of introductions, but they weren't going to be able to put a case together that NICE was ever going to accept. So actually the world market is really crazy, and being able to say that you sell something in this country counts for a lot more than I realized. It just blew my mind away to see how much people were putting into small companies over there, and their main aim was to get stuff sold in this country. So that just changed my view of what was going on.